Women without class, chicas, cholas, trash, and the presence and absence of class identity. Social class is often underexamined in studies of gender. How do young women perform their gender and social class? Changing modes of femininity, where most of whom at no point expect or hope to be economically supported by a man, is what this reading is about. The young Latina women are often coded as male, and race is not classed appropriately, but it is melded together. And so we must focus on changing modes of femininity. The author argues that class is a performance and also performative. To do this, they had a study that's an ethnography. They observed and interacted with 60 high school girls. 30 were white and 30 were Mexican American. There were various cliques based on class and race hierarchies in combination, and the cliques had social roles, a particular type of curriculum the students would follow, and extracurricular activities that were sorted by these various cliques. Middle class girls perform working class identity and vice versa when race and class are intersected to understand their performances, and they sometimes passed in these particular type of roles. Girls who were passing had to negotiate their inherited identity from home with their chosen public identity at school. Class is not only material location, but also a performance. The normalization and institutionalization of class inequality regulates class performances. Institutionalized class inequality creates class subjects who perform or display differences in cultural capital. The author claims there is dissonant femininities among the various cliques. The main two groups were the preps and las chicas. Elements of behavior that come to represent one category, either the chicas or the preps, are rejected by the other and may be exploited by the other category through the development of a clearly opposed element. So they know who they are by what they know they're not. Among women, clothing and cosmetic differences are taken to be indexes of the differences in sexual morals between classes. And the author gives a long description of the chicas and how they're described. They're not preps, and they were attracted to vocational classes. They have a sense of unfairness, and they have a particular style. Their romantic interests were interpreted incorrectly by outsiders. Their class differences are coded as sexual differences, and these young women or girls will keep the babies if they do become pregnant, which is different. These differences were not apparent with the preps. Overall, and while school personnel at times explain working class Mexican girls' gender performance as a consequence of their culture, an assumed real ethnic culture difference in which women are expected to fulfill traditional roles and are victims of machismo and a patriarchal culture, the girls' generational status were not taken into account. The author argues that class must be understood and examined closely when talking about how race, ethnicity, gender affect these outcomes of students. First, we have the middle class cholas, and race really didn't matter. So in they want to separate themselves from whiteness, and so they were jumped into gangs and perform working class identity as a marker of racial ethnic bonding to be closer to one another. However, over time, they eventually accepted middle class standing as a source of cultural capital to move or have the opportunity to move from their social place at the time. They did, however, keep their friendships with las chicas in style. They try to distance themselves from preps, or at least distance themselves from someone telling them they're acting white. And they sometimes join a social group, academic social group called MICA, which is for brainy types. So by design, the middle class cholas had aspirations without assimilation, wanting to assimilate to the preps, which for them means acting white or looking white. They recruited las chicas into Mecca, and Mexican American girls' friendship crossed class performance boundaries more often than the white girls did. because of a sense of racial alliance that drew them together in relation to white students at school, and because the Mexican American community brought them together in activities outside of school. Mecca appealed less to working class performers whose racial ethnic identity was more secure, who were less vulnerable to accusations of acting white, and who understood it as a college prep activity. And so they negotiated their gender performance along with their ethnic and racial performance, along with their gender performance. Next, we'll discuss how gender and ethnic identity is also negotiated with whiteness. Class differences were articulated and individual differences in group memberships and corresponding style. Star's story is about a junior high school working girl, and she wanted to sort out her class, color, her ethnicity as well. And this is about the social politics of racial boundaries and about her move from a brown to white racial performance, where both remained working class. We're talking about white working class and the brown working class. Here, white performance included a racist discourse by which she distanced herself from Mexican Americans via derogatory statements about them. And so we see here that white trash was something they pushed against, and they pushed against in terms of the negative things about lower class whiteness, but they also wanted to push against this idea that they weren't really Mexican. But at the same time, when they're with Mexicans, they wanted to pass as Mexican, but as a respectable kind. Overall, the author is arguing that class is missing in analysis. Class is largely missing as a category of identity offered by popular culture and political discourse in the late 20th century United States. Working class constituency goes unrecognized as class differences and is downplayed, and Americans are constructed as part of the great middle class. It was the essentialized conceptions of race and gender that helped to keep the differences of class invisible. Race and gender were more readily perceived as natural and inevitable cause of social forces, while class was left unnamed. Think of class as performance in the sense that class is a cultural identity, and its effect is by social structures. Social actors largely perform the cultural capital that is a consequence of the material and cultural resources to which they have access to. Cultural performances most often reflect one's habits or unconscious learned dispositions, which are not natural or inherent or prior to the social organizations of class inequality, but are in fact produced by it.